All right. As for every sessions that we've attended so far, the code of conduct is applying today. So please be kind and supportive, especially as you're presenting the results, of your work and your thinking today. And yes, we're very excited to see everyone share their thoughts. As we say, we have quite a few people presenting today, so we won't have much time for questions. So what we're encouraging people to do is to share them in writing on the Framapad. We'll share the links for every presentation. And then if people can just put their questions in writing, and we can interact in the Framapad, that would be great. It would also be great if you can load your slides ready to be presented, as so that when it's your turn, you're ready. So I think we're going to start with you, Alila. Sorry if I butchered that. If you're ready to go.
Yes, I'm just trying to present. I'm just trying to get my presentation ready, so if you give me like 2 minutes.
Yeah, no worries. And I think next we will go with Fotis, if Fotis is here. No, not yet. So who is next that has their slide ready? Maybe Masume, if you can present after that first, if you can get your slides ready. Brilliant. If you're running into issues, Alila, we can also maybe put the slides up for you.
Well, sure, you can.
Yeah, is that easier for you?
Yeah, you can.
Okay. Bethan, do you think you can do that? Or right. And then you can just order Bethan around and tell her when to move to the next slide. Welcome, everyone. It's great to see you all. How are you getting on, Bethan? Cool. Yes, I can see the screen.
Okay, wonderful. You got them quiet.
We're going to start the timer just because we're trying to keep on time today. So yeah, just is that working? Yeah, take it away.
Okay. Well, thank you so much, Elsa, for the invitation today. My name is Alila. I am a communications and creatives lead at Synapse Organization. This is an organization that I'm also a co-founder of. And the project we are currently working on is on early warning systems. So I'll take you through a little bit of that and what I have learned so far in open life science and what in the next steps. Yeah, basically. So next slide. Thank you. So basically, what early warning systems, what we're doing in early warning systems within Synapse. So the project is about, say, things like hazard mapping, and we are basically trying to build an early warning system for coastal communities to warn them against flooding. Yeah. So in terms of flooding, we are working on things like community trainings, evacuation drills, and things like that. What we have been able to do so far is get the community engaged to uploading real-time data, because most of the time what we have, we get the information quite late. Yeah, so not so much in real time, but we are working with communication platforms or data platforms like Ushahidi that help us to do that. So far in the program, my goal in this program was to learn how to incorporate open science into citizen science. Yeah, because I realized along the program that so many people who use open science are like coders or things like that, but I didn't see it so much in social science or in citizen science. So I just wanted to learn how do we do it. And key things that stood out for me of the learnings, one was learning about open licensing. The fact that you can have information out there, but it's not useful or it can't be used maximally just because of the licenses, yeah, that are available. Probably they are too restricting, yeah. And I was also glad to learn about the theory of open by default versus open by design. Most of the time, you find as we lead projects, we make them open by default. Yeah. So learning that they need to be open by design from the very word go, so that especially with communities, so that they are not just used, they don't just feel used, or they're not just there to as sources of data, but but that they are part of the whole thing and they have the power to make a difference. My highlight during the coaching session was how open source data is shaping conservation of seabirds in the high seas across the Pacific with Virginia. It was a really nice session. Next slide, please. Yeah, that's basically a screenshot of what stood out for me in the learning. Next slide. Yeah, so next steps in CNAPS, we are looking to promote open data sharing and to advocate for transparency in community-generated data sets. We're also looking to integrate citizen platforms like Ushahidi was telling you about. We're leveraging tools such as Ushahidi for community reporting, and we're also looking for appropriate licensing for community data, where it's available to the general public, but still takes into acknowledgement the ownership and rights, and that the community's rights are respected in open frameworks. Next slide, please. No, really. Okay, go to the last slide. Thank you. I'm at the end of my presentation. Thank you for listening, everyone.
Thank you so much. That was really interesting. I did a lot of citizen science like years ago, and this is great to see how you're thinking about it in that context. So thank you so much. All right, is the next person ready? I think it was Masumi. Great. Oh God. It's very intense sound. All right, we saw your slides briefly.
Just let me share again. Can you see my slide at the moment?
Yes.
Yes, okay.
Lovely tree.
So I start. Hello, everyone. My name is Masum Megol Mohammedian, and I'm a postdoctoral researcher in computational neuroscience at Simon Fraser University in Canada. I completed my PhD in mathematics, and after graduating, I decided to apply my mathematical knowledge to challenging problems in neuroscience. I began this journey in my home country, Iran. Throughout my academic journey, I have always been passionate about conducting meaningful research and learning from leading scientists and research groups around the world. At the same time, I often wondered how we could better use the incredible talent and research potential that exists in my home country. I wanted not only to improve my own research, but also to contribute to a stronger research culture and create more opportunities for collaboration. When I joined the Nebula program, my understanding of open science was like a puzzle with many disconnected pieces. I knew about open data, open code, GitHub, and, for example, transparency, but I didn't yet see how all these ideas fit together. During Nebula, I realized that open science is much more than a collection of tools and practices. It could be a mindset. To explain how this mindset changed my perspective, I like to share my thoughts through three dimensions of my life. First, open science in my daily life. One of the biggest inspiration I gained from Nebula was realizing that the principles of open science are not limited to research. They can also be practiced in our everyday lives. The first place that came to my mind was my family. Every family creates valuable knowledge. Every day we develop ideas to solve problems. We discover better recipes, gardening techniques, exercise routines, parenting experiences, and countless other practical things. Parents learn from their children, children learn from their parents, and everyone learns from one another. Yet many of these valuable experiences disappear because they are never documented, organized, and intentionally shared. What if we thought of our family as a small open community? Our family can become a safe place where we can practice openness, collaboration, documentation, and constructive feedback without fear of making mistakes. We can think of the family as the leaf of a tree. The second one is open science in my research. You can think about research about the branch of a tree. There is where Nebula had the biggest impact on me. Before joining the program, I already shared code and data in some of my projects and had experience using GitHub. However, Nebula changed the way I think about research. I realized that open science is not something you add after a project is finished or something you occasionally apply in the middle of a project. It should become part of the project's foundation from the very beginning. Now my central question has changed from how can I share this project after it is finished to how can I design this project so that openness is built into every step from the very beginning. Another valuable lesson I learned is that I don't have to implement every open science practice perfectly on the first day. I can start with small and manageable steps. As I gain more experience, I can gradually improve my workflow and adopt more open practices. I also learned to welcome feedback. I think constructive criticism is not something to fear. It is one of the most powerful ways to improve our work. And the third one is open science with my community. You can imagine it as the tree. The final change was in how I think about my role in the scientific community. Open science becomes truly sustainable only when it is shared. It is not enough for me alone to adopt open practices. For openness to create lasting impact, we need to encourage and support one another so that everyone benefits. I'm fortunate to know many researchers in the Iranian mathematics and neuroscience communities. I hope to begin with small talks, practical workshops, and by sharing my own experiences. Again, I believe in taking small steps. I think perhaps someone who hears about open science today will become a strong advocate for it years from now. I like to think of every community as a tree. And finally, I think openness shapes how we design our research, organize knowledge, welcome different perspectives. I also hope this mindset extends beyond academia. I believe every community can become its own tree. When we look at the forest, we don't see only one tree. We see many different trees, each unique, each growing in its own way. Together, they create an environment where life can flourish. Thank you very much, and sorry it takes too much.
That at all. That was a very beautiful presentation. I really love your quotes, that community grow like one small act of openness at a time. Lots of people commenting on your slides and how beautiful they are, and also appreciating the analogy you used with the tree. So thank you so much for sharing. This was a great presentation. Who would like to go next? Stephen, are you ready?
Yeah, sure. I can.
Yeah,
I
and then
can share my
maybe
slides.
Maybe
Yep.
Fotis after Stephen?
Yes, I can. Thank you.
That's great.
Let me just share my slides. I apologize. My camera's not working today for whatever reason. Where is this working here? Sorry, the application isn't coming up. It's just a PDF. Great.
Would you like me to share it for you?
Yeah. Oh, sorry. Here it came up. Here we go.
Oh, brilliant.
Okay. Can you all see the slides?
Yes.
Okay. No, it's not. It's not transitioning. Give me 1 second here.
A very intriguing topic.
There we go.
Oh, here you go.
Amazing. Okay.
Brilliant.
Hi, everyone. Again, apologies. My camera is not connecting today. Great to see some other folks here from SFU in Vancouver, Canada. I'm actually coming to you from Calgary, Canada. So I'm a PhD student and administrator of the Complex Social Problems research space in the Department of Political Science at SFU. It's a research space that co-designs problems to, or co-designs solutions rather, to complex social problems that involved numerous social groups. My research focuses on comparative political psychology, Canadian political behavior. Specifically, my research agenda looks at how American political ideas influence how Canadians think about Canadian politics and their behavior and attitudes. And then outside of academia, I also have experience in inside government, alongside advocacy and government relations, as well as stakeholder communications and strategic engagement. So key takeaways for me for the course, I think political science is in a bit different of a place. I think we're still open by default versus open for design. So I mean, actually one of the things that I've been thinking about as I've watched these presentations is like, how do we as a discipline move to open to design versus open by default? I think open by default, a lot of the things we talked about in terms of pre-registration, publishing preprints, leveraging platforms and tools like GitHub, have benefits both to the scientific community and to individual researchers. But I think open by design projects are still, I would say, less common. I think the discussion in political science is still about how we can be open by default, and there is still some benefits in open by default designs as well, as we've talked about throughout the course. But in keeping with the discipline, it's about how do you make the research outputs that you have inclusive, diverse, equitable, and most importantly, accessible. Next steps for me after this course, I think will be trying to, so I'm working on a data donation project where individuals provide their social media data to me. And so if I'm successful with the grant application for that, then it would be about how can I design this project so that it is open by default. Open by design, I think, would be more difficult on this project because there is some privacy concerns with like identifiers and stuff like that. But I would certainly strive to make it open by default, so that the project will be pre-registered. I'll be developing a data management plan, and also explaining to participants how their data will be stored kind of on a go-forward basis so that they could access it should they like. So that's kind of my plan so far. I think this course has taught me that there is an entire framework of openness, and I think Masume really summed it up. It's a way of thinking, not just like an after the fact thing. Even if the way that you are going about providing that openness is after the fact, I think it's about keeping that mindset throughout the research process. So thanks everyone, and looking forward to seeing the remainder of the presentations.
Thank you. This was really, really interesting. Any comments or question? Yes, someone is excited to see a fellow political psychologist. So there's at least two of you in this room. Oh, yes. It's great to see open science like spread in like all of those different areas and what it creates in each field. So thank you for this. Fotis, would you be able to present, and maybe Stephanie after you?
I presume you can see my screen?
Yes.
Okay. So hello everyone. Thank you for the presentations already. It's really nice to see how people approach this kind of opportunity to talk about their work so far. So my approach has been whenever I come into this session, I come from the perspective of where I currently live in, and this is because I traveled. I live in the UK for 10 years, and now when we talk about open science, we talk about open science in terms of resources, in terms of regions, and I always try to see what these kind of lessons bring to me in terms of how Greece is applying or adapting to this kind of changes and evolution. So open science in the wild, let's say, challenges and opportunities from Greece. And a little bit about me. My current employment is with Opera's research infrastructure, so I work a lot about making scholarly infrastructure open. So I'm very deeply involved in the open science movement, and I'm doing also a little bit of a doctoral research on how academic libraries are changing as infrastructures in terms of how open science is evolving as well. So for many years, academic libraries have been producing open access support, but now my question is how and what are other kind of opportunities that academic libraries can develop in terms of open science. And I'm also supporting grassroots communities such as INOSC and Ford. I came to this course from two perspectives, the individual and the community one. So for the individual, of course, is I'm doing some PhD research, and I thought I preach and I talk a lot about open science a lot, and I was thinking, okay, what are the things that I really want to maybe understand a little bit from that perspective, because I have to do my research with open science principles applied. And I think an aspect of my research will be qualitative. Open science can be quantitative a lot. I mean, a lot of guidance comes from quantitative perspectives. And I'm always trying to ask which of these concepts can be applied to qualitative research. Because library and information science is more social sciences or humanities, depending on which classification system you're looking at. So it's important to understand also which of these kind of, let's say, pre-registration, what really means for qualitative research compared to a more quantitative research that has hypotheses in it. I was very curious from the beginning when I started my PhD to do an open by design kind of approach. So that part of the course resonated with me, but I will talk about in the next slide. And of course, the more we develop computational methods, I think, although I don't have experience, code, software, I'm using, for example, an open source software solution for my scoping review. I really need to understand how this kind of material can be better managed throughout the process with open science principles in mind. And of course, from the community perspective, is I always encounter Greek colleagues where they struggle, I think, to move beyond open access and understand what open science really means to them. So from that perspective, what kind of steps should I prioritize? And I think the whole material of this course gave me a better structure, a better idea how to introduce open science to people. And of course, when Greek colleagues work on research it's international, it's collaborative, and then we have some areas where, let's say, capacity building is easier to organize, and that maybe creates some gaps between researchers across different contexts. And so, what did I learn? Let's say, what really I chose highlights, right? Because I really enjoyed the whole course. Obviously, how we speak about open science, about the ethos, the code that you need to use, the tools that we can implement. I really love this kind of holistic approach to open science. Uh, Despite the quantitative element that I talked about and the life sciences, for example, sometimes they have this kind of data that have health data, a very human element. This is the same with qualitative research a lot of the time, so they share some characteristics. So I need to be careful with how we manage that, and I think there's a lot to learn from that perspective as well. And of course, I love the presentation from Johanna Bayer about LLMs and code and all of these things. I will revisit that talk a lot, I think, in my future. And community equity is not a global south issue only. I put global south in quotation marks because I don't like this term 100%. I have my issues with it. And equity is a matter of resource. And in Greece, we have a lack of resources. So this is a very complex issue for me that needs to be addressed. Next step is to produce an open science training as part of the community that I'm actually representing here, Open Science Community Athens. And I would really like to do some sort of
It's okay, just finish.
I'm finishing now. So a little bit of research about how open science practices are being adopted, through the lens of Greek affiliations and institutions. And I have a lot of tools and ideas to take from this course in the last month and a half. So thank you very much. And I also reference Seun Olufemi here from one of the opening talks in the first couple of lessons, where I really like the way he captured the idea of open science as ethos, as practice, as activity. And feel free to connect with me in any of these directions. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And yes, lots of people clapping. Looking forward to seeing the training you develop and how you apply it in your context. That sounds great. Right, is there Stephanie, are you ready to
Yeah, let me just play my slides here. Okay, can you see my slides okay?
Yes, very
Okay.
colorful.
Awesome. So hi everyone, my name is Stephanie. And today, as we wrap up this cohort on the last day, I just want to walk you through what this program has changed for me, what I've learned, how it's already shaping my current work, and where I want to take it in the future. So who am I? I am a PhD student in psychology in the cognitive and neurosciences stream at Simon Fraser University. I'm also a member of the Institute of Neuroscience and Neurotechnology. All of that is based in Burnaby, British Columbia, Canada, at this little red point here on the map. And I have some background knowledge in psychology, neuroscience, and public health. And then finally, I like to think of myself as an open science champion, or at the very least, trying to be one and working towards that. So for some context, my PhD project is situated within a large cohort study called the Brain Resilience Study under this Institute for Neuroscience and Neurotechnology. So through this project, we are examining this idea of brain resilience, or the brain's ability to adapt and stay strong despite disease or injury. The population for this study is healthy older adults who are above age 50 and reside in British Columbia, Canada. So we have a really large and rich data set here, including genetic data, neuroimaging, biological samples, cognitive tests, sleep collections, and lifestyle data. So my research specifically involves the development of scripts for processing, statistical analysis, and working in a large collaborative team. And I'll come back to that in just a moment. So why does open science matter? To me, specifically coming into this program, I already knew that the replication crisis was prevalent, particularly in psychology and neuroscience research. In fact, many researchers can't even produce or reproduce their own results. So since I work in a large team based all across Canada, openness and communication is really important to prevent the unknowing duplication of each other's work, naming files differently, storing things in different places, or running slightly different versions of the same process. So open science practices, things like consistent naming conventions, shared processes, and common file structure, and many living data management plans are what let us actually work as one team instead of several kind of disconnected islands. So here's what actually stuck with me through this cohort. There was a lot I wanted to put on this slide, but I tried to summarize it in a few bullet points here. So I was reminded that open science can build trust with other researchers as well as others outside of the research community and help to combat this replication crisis. Good documentation is essential for collaboration, and we see that evident hopefully within my project. And a script only I can understand is ultimately a liability on my large team, and a liability for also my future self trying to figure out what I did. So hopefully we're working against that. I have also learned about the importance of licensing for accessibility. So licensing is not optional. It does make the reuse possible. And we talk about being open by design. So that is definitely a part of that. And then finally, I want to highlight that without one the final thing I want to highlight is that I learned that citing software matters just as much as citing a paper, and that it's the credit for the tools that make the work possible. So I will definitely be doing that in the future. So here's what I will be trying to accomplish moving forward. So short term, I want to keep our data management plans living rather than static. I am victim to that, just finishing them and kind of leaving them. So revisiting them and updating them as the study evolves instead of treating them as complete. In the medium term, I want to bring our pipeline up to real open code standard with full documentation, licensing, and version control. So it's actually ready to share, not just functional for me. And then in the long term, I want to carry this past our brain resilience study entirely and champion open science practices in the community, in my lab, in the department, and stay connected to the OLS community. So I keep being upheld by it and not just inspired by it. I finally wanted to say a big thank you to all of the instructors, facilitators, coaches, and organizers for giving me this opportunity to learn such important information and skills that I hope to carry forward through my graduate degree and beyond.
Thank you. That was excellent. People have commented saying that they love your PhD project. And excellent point in citing code and software. That we need to keep this visible for better recognition for all researchers, which I think is a point that many people here would agree with. Personally, I loved your mention of good data management plans and naming things. Someone told me recently, I was interviewing them for an article on the topic. She was like, "It's good documentation is a love letter to your future self." And yes, I think that's very true. Is Michael Smith ready to present?
Yes, I am.
Brilliant. And maybe after you, if Armando, thank you for putting the link to your slide. If you could get ready after Michael.
Do you want me to share the slides?
Yes, please. Can you share your screen?
Yeah. Can everyone see that? Yes, it's just loading. Sorry. Just trying to get the right view on. Okay. So my name is Michael Smith, and I am a program manager in the clinical data science unit at Manchester University Society NHS Foundation Trust in England and the UK. I've been at MFT for 12 years, probably over 20 in the NHS. What I do in my current role is CDSU, we basically prepare and give access to MFT patient data for research purposes. And as part of that remit, my role is to guide the researchers through the application process. And the researchers can come from anywhere. They can be from within healthcare, academia, commercial, to kind of track and monitor the applications through the project life cycle, which sounds easy, but when there's so many moving parts, it's not. Ensure that governance standards are being met at all times, which is probably the most important part of my job. Kind of act as admin point of contact, and you plan the workload of the analysts to it and the team. So kind of what I've learned and what open science I can apply in my role is kind of as someone who is essentially a project manager, any efficiency can send me wild, and not in a good way. Just so this course has opened my eyes to the importance of sharing good practice where it exists, which even though I'm not a researcher and I'm not really involved in the open source world, the general principle is you're still the same. We should share our good practice. One thing I'd say that it's not something I've learned, but it's a challenge in my mind that the course has thrown out, is we often work with commercial partners. And although many of their products have actually been built using open source, they are keen to kind of not pay it back, in the sense that they are obviously a commercial business which wants to make money, and the way of doing that is to kind of have proprietary outputs, which kind of goes against the open source ethos. I'm not saying that it's completely antithetical, but it's certainly a challenge, and it's one that we've not really been able to solve as a team. And kind of the final point is our team does use open source software in key parts of our infrastructure. Like most things, it fails every now and then. So we're reliant basically on a community of volunteers to help us with our problems. And we do contribute to this community, and the relationship is reciprocal. And I think seeing all the different aspects of kind of open source and the ethos of what it's based on over the past few weeks has reminded me of the importance of contributing, even if it's only small. If lots of people do small things, it becomes something big. So that's pretty much my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And thank you for that message, but the reliance on communities and the importance of small contributions. Lots of people clapping. Yeah, and thank you for the mention as well of the commercial actors and how that intersects with open science. Great, and don't hesitate to leave your feedback and your questions in the Framer pad. Armando, are you ready?
Give me a second. I'm
Yeah.
almost ready. Yeah.
Maybe after Armando, would Mohammed be ready to
Yes,
go?
yes.
Great.
I'm ready.
Could I wait one turn? Is just that I have a bit of issue from my end. Sorry.
Yeah, no worries. Do you want us to present the slides for you, or do you just want to have a few minutes?
Just a few minutes, please.
Okay. Maybe if someone else is ready to go, and then Armando can have a little bit less pressure.
Okay.
Yeah, are you ready, Mohammed?
Yeah.
Cool. And then,
Okay.
yeah, take your time, Armando.
Okay. Let's share my screen. Yeah. Okay.
Yes.
Small screen visible?
Yes.
Okay. I am Mohammed from Harama University, Ethiopia. And my presentation title for today is From Learning to Impact through our OLS journey. So I start with my background is I am lecturer at Harama University. And in addition to my lecturer role, I'm serving as ambassador at African Society of Medical Laboratory. And also regarding open sciences, I am among the local network leads at AREN, African Reproducibility Networks, which works the same work, just like OLS, and I'm the leader on those groups. And as academician, I have more than one three or more publication with many of them open sciences, I mean open access. And currently I'm attending OLS to enhance my understanding of OLS, I mean open sciences, and to build connection with global open science community. This is my background is, and okay. Okay. When it comes to learning takeaways, open science is a new global movement that strive to make science accessible, reusable, and transparent for global scientific community and beyond this. While it's difficult, we have been attending for 12 sessions, and we learned a lot. I've learned a lot. From this, what I learned is shortly power of open science. Open science collaboration and increase reproducibility. And this is shortly a list of goals. If you didn't collaborate with us, we could not get this opportunity. This is one of the takeaways. The other is from OLS, we learned how transparency and reproducibility can transform scientific world. And we have learned data management plan. How can we store, record, and archive our data for use anytime we want it? And we have learned open data and open results and licensing. Before this training, I just heard it. I don't know what licensing means. No, I understand it well. And lastly, open science tools. We can use GitHub, Zenodo repository, and other tool to store and share our data. the next steps, looking ahead, yeah, I plan to implement what we have learned here in 4 ways. First is to integrate open science into teaching material, maybe including in curriculum as a chapter in teaching the material, so the student can get awareness about open sciences. And currently, yeah, I have been trained with open air on policy developments, and currently I'm working on developing open science policy for my institution, and it also helped me to nurture this. And the other is community engagement. Yeah, we get to learn and collaborate with you, and we have to join open science community like RN, OLS, and others. So finally, I said, I learned that through open science we can unlock scientific knowledge and the power of knowledge for everyone. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Perfectly on time as well. Find that really interesting what you were talking about with the teaching and trying to influence your institutional policies. Yeah, trying to like train the next generation. It's really important. Yeah, if you have any feedback, don't hesitate to put it in the front pad. And thank you so much for this presentation. That was great. Armando, were you able to get your slides up? Or should we try to get to another person? Oh, here we go. Yes. Lovely. We can see your slide.
You are muted though,
You're
so if you're talking,
muted,
we
yeah.
can't hear you.
Sorry, I was mute. Yeah, I was just wondering if I should start now or should I maybe like wait a second before I started?
No, you can start. You can start now. I think we're ready.
All right.
If that works for you.
Okay. So I am Armando, right? I am a student at SFU in Vancouver, in British Columbia, specifically on Burnaby. I live on Vancouver as of right now, right? And so recently I got into the Nebula program, more so because I become increasingly more interested in research overall, as I am in the Faculty of Engineering specifically. So because of that, I've taken a bit of an interest in seeing how other people themselves interact with this type of information or this type of projects, right? How much of this is something that public may want? How much of it is something that people are actively looking into, right? Since I personally am interested in more so biomedical engineering, right? I've always been very curious about like what other people think about it, or other people themselves look out for when looking for anything regarding engineering, because there's always going to be some public projects that people are generally aware of because of how it immediately impacts them, right? Like some type of train station or some type of energy uh, plant, right? Or just in general changes to infrastructure, housing, etc. However, since in general, like information and the way in which it's published sometimes is something that you need to more so actively seek out for. I've always been very, very curious about stuff like open science and the ability or the possibility of making information more well spread, more well known, and the way in which the public might reciprocate this information, and how they may become interested in this type of stuff. Because most general public won't necessarily be interested on something unless it necessarily affects them. So one of the key elements I was actually very interested in seeing within the program was how does the public themselves, right, like how do they gather, how do they garner interest on something? And I do think that overall certain prospects that we're presenting within the program, like the possibility of building trust, right, and the sense of community, was certainly one of the more interesting aspects of it, and something that helped me quite a bit. Another thing would be more so in regards to specific tools that were presented, because while I myself was well aware of GitHub as a open source type of tool that most people could use. In fact, I myself had used it in the past. I never really like looked into that in depth myself. I wasn't really aware of like, oh, it was used outside of maybe like downloading some type of application, right? Because I have used it in the past to download apps or actively like research how to modify something within my computer, maybe for a specific program I need to for my classes. So to see like a more in-depth way in which I can utilize it was very interesting for me. And certainly something that I hadn't seen before, even if I knew about it beforehand as like something that existed, right? Personally, another thing that I went into within the program in mind at the start was that while I wasn't actively, pursuing a specific research, I did think that it was an incredibly important thing to do, because I believe that on the future, I am very likely to use this type of tools, research, etc., in like most projects that I'm gonna do. Because if I say I'm looking to work as an engineer, things like overall public interest and overall like funding, elements like that, research is like an incredibly important tool. And that's why I do think that this is a program that was certainly incredibly useful because of that. I think I'm out of time.
Yeah, just finished on time. Yeah, with
Right.
a very nice message here about,
Yeah.
train before you need it, and ensure yourself for the future. That's
Indeed.
great. Lots of people clapping away. And glad to hear it was useful. And Maite, would you be? Yeah.
Yes.
Are you ready?
Yeah.
And then maybe after Maite, could we hear from Archibald?
Can you see my slides?
Yes, a lovely wave.
Okay. Okay. So, hi everyone. I named my talk Small Changes, Lasting Impact. My name is Maite. I am a marine biologist born in the cold south of Patagonia and graduated from the National University of Camagüey in northern Patagonia. Still cold, but just a little less so. I am currently a PhD fellow working in the San Matias Gulf, where I study coastal fish ecology and small-scale fisheries. And through my PhD, I also collaborate with researchers working across different marine ecosystems. And my work by training is oceanographic data stewardship, and I'm quite new in it. So I focus on curating and analyzing ecological data to better understand patterns in coastal ecosystems and the processes that shape them. Just to give you a little example, this one is the Coastal Oceanographic Observatory, that is a long-term monitoring program that has now 5 years, I think, and we work with water quality and planktonic and microbial communities. And so I joined the Nebula program because I was already aware of this famous reproducibility crisis, and I started wondering what my role could be in addressing it. I mean, not globally, but within my own research and collaborations. So at first, I thought that open science was mostly about publishing papers openly, and then I arrived Nebula and wondering what is open science about and where do it start, and then I realized it can get quite overwhelming. So during this program, I realized that it starts much earlier, and open science is about making every step of the research process more transparent and reproducible. From planning and documenting and sharing when possible and licensing and so on. So one activity that particularly changed my perspective was developing a data management protocol for the long-term monitoring program that I collaborate with. And its purpose is to provide clear guidance for anyone on how to create, manage, and work with a well-structured and shareable database. With the guidance of my coach, Virginia Alonso, I realized that good management isn't just about organizing files. It's about making research understandable and reusable, both for my future self and for others. So here's just an example of the protocol. I'm sorry, it's in Spanish, but the first version had to show it to the lead researcher of the program and the students participating. So it has the aims, the variables of the program, directory structure, dictionaries, version control, workflows, and so on. So looking ahead, I want to make these practices part of my everyday research, and I plan to practice the open by design idea and share reproducible code and prepare the datasets mainly for reuse of each project and encourage these practices within my collaboration. So this may seem like small changes, but I believe that they'll have a lasting impact, not only on how I do science, but also on the openness and reproducibility of the collaboration I'm part of currently and in the future. So the main takeaway to me is that open science is not an extra step at the end of research. It's simply a better way to do science, and the best part is that I'm not alone in that journey. So before I finish, I wanted to thank the OLS team, all the facilitators and the host and coaches, especially my coach, for creating such a welcoming and supporting learning environment. The court calls and the coaching sessions made this experience not only educational, but also inspiring. And it was a pleasure to be part of this community. So thank you.
Thank you so much. It's a great presentation. I like that, like, you have similar themes with other presentators as well. Like, sounds like the replication crisis has traumatized a lot of people, and the overwhelm as well when you start with the open science and then realizing it's more than just at the end. So yeah, very interesting themes, and best of luck.
Thank you.
All right. Would Carolina be able to get next?
Hello. I think you can see my screen. Hopefully the right screen.
We can.
Okay, good. So, I am Carolina. I have a background in scholarly communications, and I have been working in scholarly communications for 10 plus years. But as for my bachelor's degree, I have a degree in communications, so it's not, at least where I went to school, it's not very research focused. It's a lot of like getting to work focused. So I didn't have a lot of contact with research before working in scholarly communications. So yeah, I work in Cielo. We are an open science program and a network of open access journals. We have currently 18 national collections, and we have a data server and a preprint server. So open science is really a big part of my work in my everyday life, but it's a lot on the publishing side. It's not so much on the actual research side, so we don't actually have that much contact with researchers, which is what made me interested in taking this course. And yeah, so I have been mainly working with institutional blogs, which is the Cielo in Perspective blog. So we have a more institutional blog that talks a lot about open science and peer review and that kind of stuff. And we also have a press release site, press release blog. And also with our submission systems, which are OGS and ScholarWall. I did see that there's a lot of people from SFU here, so we do use a lot of PKP tools. And we also have the preprint server, which I'm responsible for as well. So for learnings and next steps, they're kind of one and the same for me. So as I said previously, what I was most interested wasn't necessarily in the concept of open science and all that, because these are things that I'm already fairly well aware of. I was mostly interested in knowing how researchers saw open science and how they were interacting with it. One thing that was a little bit mysterious for me was the data and code sharing processes. So learning a lot about that was very interesting because usually for data, we're like just deposit it on the server. For that, right? And I think it was extra work goes into that, and how open science should be something that's part of a research plan and from the very, very beginning for the researcher. And I think that's really helpful for us to get a better understanding and how to work better with the researchers. And also, because I work with submission systems as well, it can also be very helpful when we're thinking about the submission process and how to improve that. So yeah, data and code sharing processes. It was also interesting to get a better understanding of the work involved. And yeah, I'll continue applying these open sciences practices in my work as usual, but I'm very happy to have a better understanding that should help us make more informed decisions. And I think that's it.
Thank you. It's great to hear from someone that's like more the communication side and trying to understand, yes, on behalf of like the people that you are helping with your work. And great to hear from Cielo as well. You do really exciting stuff there. So thank you so much for this. Any questions just from up the way? And I was wondering if Isha was ready to present. I could see like if you can just share your screen, and then we can see if there's a nodal issue.
No
later.
problem. Can you see my screen? It should load.
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Lovely. Hi, everyone. Thank you for having me. My name is Isha, and I am the Project and Engagement Coordinator at Clinical Data Science Unit at Manchester University NHS Foundation Trust. A little bit about me. My background is actually law, business law, which gave me a strong foundation in governance, ethics, and critical thinking. I then completed my master's in project management, where my thesis explored research in the impact of AI on risk management in healthcare projects. Now, as I said, I am a project engagement coordinator at MFT. My day-to-day sits between the project coordination, stakeholder engagement, and data governance. I also represent CDSU in the UK Trusted Research Environment community through the community management working groups and connecting our local practice to the national open conversation. And so zooming out slightly here, this is the bigger picture of what the Clinical Data Science Unit exits do. Our mission is to simply say and make high quality healthcare data work for professionals and patients benefit, connecting research, clinicians and innovators to that data safely and transparently. That breaks down into 4 pillars for me: research data, operational data science, secure and ethical by design, and cross-sector collaboration, where we partner with NHS colleagues, academics, HDR UK, and beyond. It's really good to see that recently I've been applying what I've learned in recent projects. Wanted to kind of bring this to life with some of the actual projects that I've been recently working on, because these are what really shape how I think about open science. On the technical side, I've supported documentation and governance. I've structured project work, and collaboration side, coordinating intertrust meetings and follow-ups. Each of these in its own way taught me something different about what open means in practice. One of the biggest learning I've taken away is openness is a practice of care, not just a checklist. This brings me to the most single important thing taking away from this program. The biggest shift for me from the ethos and data modules was realizing that open science in healthcare settings isn't a compliance exercise. It's fundamentally a stakeholder relationship. That means designing our processes, documentation, and project artifacts so that researchers, a governance colleague, and patients can all understand and trust what we do and why we do them. 3 things that sit underneath that is transparency builds trust between researchers, governance, and how a project is structured from day one, not something you bolt on after. And small openness habits are what actually compound into the real culture change rather than the big gestures for me in here. Next steps and how I'll be applying open science in healthcare projects going forward, by having an open by design documentation, bringing open science checkpoints into how I structure them, data management templates, strengthening the TRE community link, and of course the governance legible to stakeholders is very important as well. So thank you for facilitating this.
Thank you so much. It's great to see people from the clinical side and another NHS person. Yeah, we need you here. So this is great. Thank you so much for your presentation. And yes, don't hesitate if you have questions and feedback. And I think we have one more person. Insky? Sorry, I butchered that. Should be ready to present?
Yeah, sure. Are you going to share the slide?
We can if you want, yes.
Okay.
If
I can't open this one because I don't have PowerPoint.
I can. I have them on my computer, so let me just share those.
All right.
Let me see. Is this working?
Yeah. Okay.
Yes.
So, hello everyone. My name is OLS. You can call me O for short. I'm a PhD student at the University of Rwanda. And I must say, before I joined OLS, I thought that it was about publishing papers for free. But it turns out that it was just way beyond that and more. So, a little about me. Like I said, I'm a PhD researcher. I'm a founder of Neuroscience, Women Neuroscience Rwanda, and also Health Wave Initiative. I'm also the research associate and mental health dialogue series coordinator for FIRAT. And across all this, there's one thing that stands out. Research connects them. And this research is actually to improve lives. So next slide. So Women in Neuroscience Rwanda, what we do, we create mentorship programs for young females interested in neuroscience. Also, we organize training sessions, webinars, opportunities for grants, and the rest for those interested. And then in Health Wave Initiative, I would say I'm a mental health advocate. I so much like everything that has to do with mental health because without mental health, there is no health at all. So in Health Wave Initiative, we carry out advocacy programs, awareness, education in different African countries. Currently, the most active right now is the one that's going on in Congo amongst young adults between the ages of 15 to 25 who are in that crisis setting. So next slide, please. So far, what I've learned so much, but the number one thing that has really stood out for me, my biggest lesson is actually as open as possible and as close as necessary. Before now, I used to think that sharing data and the rest would mean someone might just stay at the other end and steal your work. I thought it just ended at when I publish, you just cite me in your papers and acknowledge my other work. But from here, I've gotten to understand that research needs to be transparent. It needs to be able to be used in another side by other persons. It doesn't mean they're stealing your work, but you just make the work easier for others to use. It is you're seeing like it is just the beginning of the dissemination of whatever information you had in mind before you started your research. So you can't just be sitting down and be trying to debug a code for like 1 month. Meanwhile, somebody has already done that. All you have to do is use it, acknowledge the person, and then use the open ways and that the person feels you're not stealing his or her work. So I have known that I can turn research into a shared resource. Okay, so why open science matters? I came across this, and this is a Nigerian university that shared a bioinformatics pipeline on GitHub. And we have another group of scientists in Kenya. They used it to accelerate mental health research. We have another in Congo using it for sickle cell research. So you can imagine just one work is being used in 2 different countries. I'm sure there are other places they're going to still have access to it. So with this, I've learned that it reduced duplication. It's help scientific progress. So it's just showing you that it is not like an isolated competition. You give everyone a shared ecosystem, a place that we can all work together collaboratively because we know that collaboration is the heart of open science. So on the end, I said when research outputs are openly shared, one project, sorry, please can you go back there? So one project can create impact far beyond its original institution. Like I said, it goes far beyond what you even thought before you started the research. Next slide, please. So my next steps as I continue my PhD journey, I've learned to be more open. I've learned to build collaborative and reproducible mental health research. I have research groups I work with. I have research programs I organize. With this, I'm bringing open science to it. I'm going to be organizing training sections and workshops for these young people. So those are interested in research to know that open science is here, because someone like me before now, I had no idea exactly how it works. All those repositories and the rest, I thought it was just people trying to do, all the tech stuff and internet stuff. But right now I'm aware and I'm ready to share this information to everyone that comes across me. Next slide, please. So far from here, Open Science thrives through collaborations. I'm open to collaborations. If you're interested in partnership or trainings, since I'm going to be organizing training sessions, I hope you can reach out to me and then we can move research forward. So together we can create open, collaborative, and impactful research that strengthens the system. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you so much, Nebula. Thank you so much, all those people I came across with, especially the first group of breakout room I met. I think I still remember Anu and Mate. Thank you so much, everyone, and nice to meet you all.
Thank you. And yes, several people in the Pad, they've indicated that they would love to collaborate. So hopefully you can find each other and start working together. And I love that shift that you mentioned from like competition to collaboration. Yeah, so looking forward to seeing what you do with the rest of your PhD and how you use all of those principles.
Thank you.
Right. I think we only have, if I'm not mistaken, everyone who needed to present in person today has presented. Do let me know if that is wrong. And we just have a couple of presentations of people who have sent their recordings that we would like to play. Included one by Zinab, who is in the meet, but maybe it's just easier to play the presentation.
My name is Zainab Ilesami. I'm really pleased to be among the OLS Nebula program cohort 4, and I'm glad to be at the very end with everyone else graduating. It's really exciting. A little bit about myself. I'm a clinical data scientist at Manchester University NHS Foundation Trust. Here, I use routinely collected NHS data, that's patient data, to support research and innovations projects. I'm also a member of BCS, as well as the UK Trusted Research Network. I've learned a lot of things during the course of this program, especially about open science and being open in methodologies, as well as the principle of openness. Part of my takeaways was also on the licensing, which was a little bit new to me because it's not the sort of consideration that I have when thinking about research outputs. So it's really, really pleasing to learn about that during the course of this program. Also, at the very beginning of the program, I was conflicted with how open science could apply in my work, as I deal with very sensitive data. But I got to understand that open science is also about making research processes transparent, reproducible, reusable, and trustworthy, while protecting the patient confidentiality. So that was a very big one for me, and it's a learning that I'll be taking forward and maximizing as I continue to support more research and innovation projects. Also, it helped me appreciate the importance of FAIR principles in my work. Is making data and outputs findable, accessible, interoperable, and reusable, even though patient-level data cannot be shared openly. We have things like metadata, data dictionaries, analysis scripts, protocols, and summaries that can often be shared safely. So this is something that I want to do more on, double down on the metadata and data dictionaries that we create in order to make sure that the process is fair, accessible, and very transparent. What I learned also was about the licensing, so ensuring that we're applying the right licenses to the outputs, open publishing, which is something that is crucial and like a very, a very new learning for me. Really glad for the opportunity to be on this program, as well as grateful to all of the coaches and facilitators of the program. It's really been an insightful one. The next steps for me is to collaborate more, and this was also one of the exciting part of this program, because we got to collaborate with people across several continents and across different walks of life. And something someone said in one of the rooms that I was stuck with me, which is like, when you share, you're helping others and you're also being helped. So it's like a mutual, it's like a symbiosis relationship, which is good. And yes, also part of my next steps is to build more usable metadata and data dictionaries, promote FAIR principles in my work and within the community, and start with open where possible and protected where necessary, because I work with patient level data. I know that I need to focus on making research processes transparent and reproducible. Thank you so much for the opportunity to be a part of this program, and hope to see everyone and continue to collaborate. Bye.
That was lovely. Yes, great. Should we play Reta's presentation? And Reta is encouraging people to be in touch. Apparently there's contact info at the end of the recording. So yes, they're encouraging other people
Hello,
to...
everyone. My name is Rita Yunin, and today I'll be walking you through my open science journey with the Nebula program. A little bit about me: I'm in my final year of undergrad studying behavioral neuroscience at Simon Fraser University. My main research involvements and interests are in neurorehabilitation, traumatic brain injuries, and understanding how repeated overdose events affect general brain health and cognition. As well, I am interested in bringing research to the communities and bringing engagement in that way. Before Nebula, I had heard about open science. I knew the importance of openness in science. However, I didn't really understand what that would look like in practice. So going into the program, my goal was to learn how researchers apply those principles, to really understand the tools and resources that are being used, and to learn how to incorporate them in my own future research, and to connect with people with different experiences and practices. Throughout the program, one of the biggest takeaways was realizing that open science is so much more broader and in-depth than just making papers more accessible. It is implemented in every aspect of the research process from start to finish. This can be through data management plans, organization, documentation, version controls, track changes, responsible data sharing, sharing code, considering ethical and privacy considerations from the very beginning. The practices and tools we've learned throughout the program really support these open science principles. Proper documentation will help others and your future self understand how the project was really conducted, as well as transparency and documentation of methodology. At its core, I believe science is about collaboration, with sharing of resources, code, and detailed methods. It allows opportunity for others to build on the projects. Open science also holds research to a high standard of transparency and accountability. This increases trust and research integrity. Open science reduces barriers to access for information, knowledge, and methods and resources, so it is more available to a broader community. Altogether, open science really benefits everyone. For researchers, more opportunities for collaboration and more efficient ways to build on other research. For science as a whole, it improves reproducibility, it strengthens research quality and integrity, and for the general public, it makes a real-world impact of research. It builds trust from transparency and makes research more accessible to the everyday person. Beyond the program, moving forward, my goal is to continue to personally learn about open science and stay engaged with that community. I'm dedicated to incorporating these principles into my own future research and academic career. I also want to focus on bringing awareness and education of open science, particularly for students and early researchers. Many students, like myself, enter the research field without really ever hearing about open science or understanding what it really means. By introducing open science earlier on in the career, we can help students and researchers develop good research practices from the very beginning. For the project, my vision is to help build a stronger open science community at SFU, particularly for healthcare researchers and for students interested in research or those beginning their research careers. First off, the first step is to build the foundations by creating an organization committee to bring this project to life. That means bringing together people of different disciplines through different career stages and research backgrounds who are passionate about open science and making it more accessible and passionate about bringing it to the students and early researchers. The second step is organizing and hosting introductory workshops. These would provide students and researchers with an approachable, non-judgmental introduction to open science and practical tools. A lot of time research can be very intimidating, so this can be a stepping stone to building that community. The third step is moving beyond just workshops and creating an ongoing community of engagement. This could be through monthly discussions, co-working spaces, community feedback. It can include a community where people can help each other access and learn about open science resources and also involve those presentations and guest speakers in that ongoing learning. It's mostly an opportunity for collaboration to help each other as we continue ongoing learning. Altogether, the goal is to help build a community where students and researchers are educating themselves on open science and who can support each other as they move their research forward in an open science principles. With that, the project would not be able to work with just one person. It works best with incorporating those diverse perspectives, experiences, and ideas from the very beginning. So I would love to hear from anyone interested, whether that's advice, experiences, ideas, or whoever is interested in collaborating to help grow the open science community at SFU.
Great. That was a nice, it's not quite the last presentation. There's one more for us to play, but for anyone who needs to drop at past on the dot, there are a couple of things that we need to remind you of about how to get your badge. So that's at the end of the Pad. I don't know if you want to go through that, Bethan, or aware, but yeah, there's a series of steps that you need to take, in particular filling the feedback survey and yeah, letting your OLS know you've done all of that so that they can give you a badge and then you can display it on your profile. And if you have any issues with any of that, just get in touch with the team and they'd be happy to help you. And yeah, for anyone who needs to leave right now, congratulations. You know, you did it, you finished. It was lovely to have you all here and participate. And then for anyone who has a few minutes, we can play the final recording.
Hello everyone, I am Anuluwako Adetayo. I currently work as a data scientist at Manchester University NHS Foundation Trust. I work within the clinical data science unit. I do not necessarily work in research directly. However, I support research by providing data services to researchers, clinicians, etc. My day-to-day activity would include understanding research questions, then extracting and preparing data to answer these important clinical and public health questions for research. I also ensure that data sets are well structured and they are in line with required governance and information. Before this training, if someone had asked me what is open science, I would have just assumed it meant everything being publicly published or publicly available. But I've learned that open science is not about making all research data publicly available. Instead, it is about improving transparency, accessibility, and collaboration, while recognizing that some information is sensitive, such as patient-level health data that I deal with daily, and they must remain protected. I think it is important to know that you can be as open as possible, but also it is important to be as closed as necessary. As someone who prepares data for research, understanding research data requirements early is important because this helps you to build a data management plan that can help clarify what data are needed, how they'll be accessed, what governance approvals are required, and how outputs will be managed. It's also support responsible sharing, identifying what information can be shared and what must remain restricted. Open science can still exist in environments where sensitive data cannot be publicly shared. So, secure data environments and controlled access systems allow researchers to access approved data while maintaining like privacy and security. There are governance processes that ensure that the data are used ethically and responsible within this secured environment. I think my role involves in enabling researchers to access this data while ensuring that appropriate approvals and restrictions and safeguards are followed. I contribute to responsible research by ensuring that data are provided according to the agreed specification and governance requirements, even when sensitive data sets cannot be shared publicly. Other research materials could be made available. For instance, we have metadata that explains what data contains. We have the data dictionary that also explains what the field or describes the field in the data set. We also have documentations that explain how the data set was created and used, and we can also share codes when it is allowed. This allows others to be able to understand and reproduce analytical methods. A key next step for me is to support the use of consistent data and documentation standards. By providing how data sets are secured and described, we can make research data easier to understand, reuse, and reproduce across various projects. Also, it is to continue. Another major step for me will be to continue promoting responsible openness by ensuring that sensitive data are made available for research where appropriate, while maintaining the patient's confidentiality. Open science is about finding the right balance between accessibility and protection. So, like I said earlier, be as open as possible, but it's also important to stay as closed as necessary while protecting this sensitive information within the data itself. So I'd say another major step is to encourage the use of data management plans at the start of research projects. This will enable that the data sets are organized securely, they are managed and documented from the beginning, while we're supporting transparency and reproducibility throughout the life cycle of the project. I'd like to say thank you to everyone who has been a part of the training and also to the organizers.
Nice. What a nice way to finish. Yeah, thank you everyone for staying. Thank you everyone for your amazing presentations and for taking part in the program. And yeah, hope you all stay in touch and
Bye,
enjoy
everyone.
having more free time in the next few weeks. Bye.